Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry Podcast. Today I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome Libby onto the podcast from Piper, Libby Gibson. And Piper, I'm sure most of you know who listens to this podcast, are a investment platform, and they invest in so many brands that we all love: Wattbike, Mouse, Propercorn, Bloom and Wild, Bruce's, the Doggy, kind of Take Care, Unleashing Happiness, Flatiron, Frame, Propercorn, tons and tons of challenger brands. And Libby, I'm so excited for this conversation. Super grateful to chat to you, because I think, as I said before we started recording, is tons of people listen to this podcast. They start a brand, they get it from their kitchen to Waitrose. I don't think they've ever actually asked, in fact, I know they haven't asked, is how do we even begin to exit this business? And you've just had so much experience in this. You've built Picture and Piano, so super grateful. Thank you so much.
A pleasure. Nice to be here.
So I think what I'd like to start with, as I said to you, I text Perry saying, what should I be asking Libby? And before we hit record, we were talking about how all brands go on this journey, and I think you've said in the research I've done, like, you've walked in founder shoes before, and from that road from, say, brand to brand legend, which is what you specialize in, there's hurdles along the way as you scale. And Perry said to me, talk to Libby about, or ask Libby about, the 7, 17 and 70. Yeah. Let's start with that as kind of the opening gambit, and then we'll just go with the flow.
Yeah. So really this is born out of our experience of, watching brands grow, mature, and recognizing that brands have inflection points. And typically that might be 7 million, 17 million, 70 million of sales, or it might be 7 people, 17 people, 70, or it might be sites. But what we see happen is that brands get to a certain point where they have to really have a great big jump up to the next step. And that's usually about professionalizing the team, investing in infrastructure, processes, systems. And I think when people start a brand, they don't really think about that. They just, as you say, they start on their kitchen table. It's fun, it's exciting, and then they get into Waitrose, and that feels like a huge step, or Sainsbury's, or whoever else. Mm-hmm. But really what happens is you build a team around you. There are lots of willing enthusiasts. They do everything, and you can't really afford a professional. And then you get to a point where the business starts to outgrow some of the people, and that is a difficult point for a lot of founders, actually, because these people have served them really well. They've been absolutely there 24/7, building the brand with them. But what I think we see is that there comes a point where you need to upscale the team, and investing, what we call it, investing ahead of the growth curve. Better to have people who know what they're doing, who know how to deal with a national retailer, who know what the norms are, people who know how to manage people. And so we see these inflection points happen, as I say, 7, 17, 70. And for us, a brand legend, people always say, what is a brand legend? Mm. And I think for us, a brand legend is where a business is a household name. People can talk about it, and it resonates with them. They have a connection with it. They feel emotionally engaged with it. And typically, we see brand legends. In our minds, it's sort of once you get to 100 million plus, you're definitely a brand legend. Where we invest at the sort of between 7 and 17 or 70 stage, actually, we can do anything along that journey. They're becoming a brand legend. They're growing up. They have challenges of succession. So that's something we should talk about, is the challenge of founder succession, because that's a big part of the journey.
I think what you said there initially about, like, the business outgrows the team, and obviously just kind of from first-hand experience, is I think you can become disgruntled when you realize the business has to professionalize. And as you say, grow up. I always think the analogy I use is when a founder starts, they're almost like a 2-year-old or a toddler, super curious. That my friend's got a 2-year-old. You just watch him play with things. It's like try different sales tactics, distribution tactics, and it is that kind of wonderful curiosity 2-year-olds have, and you can mobilize people with you on that journey. But then it's a bit like a kid has to go to university, kid has to do A levels, GCSEs, A levels, and it's that kind of professionalization. Yeah. One thing I would like to kind of understand is, how do businesses, not necessarily just the founder, how do they keep that kind of that twinkle in their eye and that curiosity, but still professionalize? Because I think that what's David Hyatt from Hyatt Denim, I don't know if you know, he says absolutely. Scale kills magic.
Yeah.
And it's like along the 1770, how do you, in your experience, how do you keep that twinkle in your eye?
Yeah, and I think that's really important to do, because it's very dangerous. You can bring in very professional people and they're used to big budgets and they want to spend lots of money on marketing, and you should never lose that curiosity, that guerrilla marketing that got you where you wanted to be in the first place. And I think when we think about it, one of the things that really important is codifying the DNA of the business quite early on. So as you scale, that DNA stays true throughout the business. So knowing what your values are, knowing what the business really mission, purpose, why it exists. A lot of founders don't codify that. It lives in their brain and it lives in them. But as you grow a business and you have more remote workers and you have more clients or more customers, it's super important that you codify that and communicate it and actually work at living and breathing it. It's so easy to let it drift and think that everybody knows, but they don't. They, somebody who joins the business 7 years in, how do they know what really was the sort of founding story, why this business is so important, what its purpose is, its reason to exist? So I think you have to invest time and money in that. And often that gets overlooked.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Honestly, means the absolute world to me. I'd be so grateful for a small favour, please. It is so hard growing a YouTube channel. It is so bloody hard. If you please enjoy these videos, just click the subscribe button. More subscribers equals bigger guests equals better conversations, and hopefully you can learn more as you build your food and drink brand. Thank you so, so much.
Let's talk about the 7 to 17 mark. And then we can get onto the 70, but most of our listeners are at that stage. So when you say professionalize, how do founders bring people in? I was speaking to the guys at Honest Burger about this, because they had the same thing where they brought in loads of high-level execs. It's basically, they call it the fallacy of high-level execs. Yep. So it's people coming in, and they had a really interesting point, which is sometimes high-level execs are quite actually insecure because they're the high salary. They're almost like bringing in the high-paying footballer to a football club. They feel like they have to put their mark down. And I know my friends have had businesses where that happens. So how do you manage that with getting someone who is super professional, but not letting them come in and kind of dismantle the thing the beautiful thing you've created?
So I think often it's about finding somebody who's first in role in a particular, they may have been a finance manager, they're moving to a finance director. Yeah. So they're not coming with a load of baggage and I must do it my way or no way. And I think it's also about cultural fit and chemistry. All the skill in the world, you can still have somebody who just comes in and they just don't fit that organisation. They're not culturally aligned. You have to make sure they're prepared to roll up their sleeves. You're still a small business. So I think it's about finding somebody who's hungry for that first opportunity. So they've got the skill, they haven't actually done the CFO, or they haven't done the CEO role, or they haven't been the commercial director. And quite often what we find is if you bring those people in that way, they've got a chance to prove themselves. It's not risking the business, but they're bringing knowledge and skill set. And so it really is about finding the right level and about the right cultural fit. And you'd be amazed at how many people don't actually invest time in knowing about that brand. And so they come to the interview and they're all about their skill set, but they've not really immersed themselves in the world of the brand. And that tells you a story.
Yes, it does. So that's what you mean, but that's kind of delicious bit of nuance there, Libby, in terms of like hiring ahead of the curve, because I think, as you say, all the bells and whistles of I've worked at, not lambasting people who work at Mars and whatnot, but founders can get blinded by that, as that is the panacea to all our problems.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think that of hiring that person who's been who's looking to take the step up to the FD, that's so interesting. And then in terms of what do you, and I go, all of this is case by case, but maybe we could talk about, I mean, there's so many brands let's maybe talk about Propercom. I think that's one of the darling examples of a brand that's been on that journey. And I know you work closely with Cassandra. When they had to professionalize or like grow up, what were some of the hires you specifically put in place ahead of the curve?
So I think finance function, ops, supply chain, commercial, and they don't all have to come at once. I think sometimes people think, we're going to hire a whole team.
Right.
No, they don't have to all come at once. I think it's about picking the battles, the most important ones. And what happens as businesses grow is they get terribly, we have to do everything now, all at once, and actually far better to step back and say, okay, what's the most important win here? What do we really, really need? And it may be you need a really great finance director because you just don't have the data to run the business very efficiently or to understand where you can improve your profit margin or whatever. So I think it's about picking and choosing the timing of what you do and making sure that you don't overload the business with new people, because that will change the dynamic of the business. And actually looking for rising stars. I'm not saying that people in the business can't move up the business. I'm just saying in certain situations, knowing how to deal with the Tesco is very different to having grown your independent out-of-home trade. It's
Yes.
just qualitatively different. You need to know how Tesco work. You need to know what a great Tesco presentation is. You need to know how they think about margin, how they think about promotion. So that knowledge, generally, you don't have in people who haven't done it before.
Yeah, and then again, this is all kind of a feeling thing, but how do you create the air of kind of professionalism yet twinkle in your eye, if that makes sense? Like that those two opposing things.
Yeah. Well, I think having culture at the heart of what you do, the way you do things, the way you talk to your people, the way you get the staff together to think about, to include them in building this living, breathing thing, because it is a living, breathing thing that is going to change and grow up and develop. So not sort of isolating it and saying, there's this thing called brand over here and you people go and do the other stuff.
Yeah.
They are the brand. Everybody has to feel it. Everybody has to know what they contribute to that brand and why they're coming to work every day to make that brand bigger and better. And so I think it's about really inclusive culture. And often I just sort of see founders or people who've started businesses, they get further and further away from the customer as well, the end user. And that's quite an interesting dynamic that happens in this 1770 journey, is that they think they know the customer and they start sort of talking about, I know my customer really, really well. And you go, but you started this 6-7 years ago. The customer may have changed. The market's changed. Embedding customer in thinking is another way of keeping that magic. Being close to customer has always been super important to Piper.
Is there an example of specifically a food brand that's done that really well? Whether that's with one of the brands you've taken on that 717 journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned Flatiron. You know, they're quite obsessive about...
I love Flatiron.
Yeah,
it's so delicious.
And so do lots of people, and it has great fandom.
Yeah.
And they really love their customers, and they know their customers. So they know that, I think I can't remember exactly the age group, I think it's 25 to 35-year-olds, you know, 60% of them being 6+ times, you know, some people have been 20+ times, and it's knowing what's important to them. Why do they keep coming back? How do we get them to refer more people? How do we build that tribe that are the super fans that are going to, you know, they spend hardly anything on marketing, and they don't need to because the fans do it for them. People bring people to Flatiron, people post about it. You know, when you get the meat cleaver, at the end of the meal, you can trade for an ice cream. You know, we've had super fans building pictures and framing them and posting them. It's that sort of...
Sorry, what I don't understand, because I've been to Flatiron quite a few times, but this is like, I'm talking 4 or 5 years ago. What's the cleaver thing?
So at the end of a meal, you should be given a little silver meat cleaver, and if you take that, most of the units have this, you take it, you hand it in, and you get a free ice cream on the way out. And so, as I say, this super fan had collected goodness knows how many, I mean, you know, 50, 100 meat cleavers, and they've created a piece of art out of it. And they framed it and they put it up on Instagram. So you get that sort of level of fandom that enables you to amplify the brand.
And that's a really great example of like how you keep those moments of magic.
Yeah.
Like that little meat cleaver is the twinkle.
It is, it's absolutely.
And so then in terms, I'd love to kind of try and reverse engineer the genius of Flatiron, because I remember when it came on the scene, because the actual cut of the meat is
it's a flat iron steak.
Yeah, flat iron steak. It's one, so they obviously get the economies of scale with what they're buying in. Like, why did Flatiron? You know, you probably got a radar on loads of different food businesses.
Yeah.
Why? What was it about that at that time?
So I think it was, it's great value for money.
Yep.
It's very simple. You look at the queues around the block and it says something, you know, it just tells you that this is a brand people love. We always research when we're looking at investments, we look into how often do people visit, how far do they come, how much word of mouth referral do brands get. And those measures are quite useful in sort of indicating that this is connected with people. People love it. You know, they have that emotional love, which, you know, plenty of brands don't. So if you go to a Aberdeen Angus steakhouse, not sure many people have a great love of that brand. It's a fuel brand rather than Flatiron, which is a love brand, and that's the distinction. So we spend a lot of time thinking about and researching into the customer, the audience, why they're coming, what the motivation is, and then, you know, how many can you have, and how far could this go? Is it just UK? Could it be international? But yes, it's getting at the essence. And
so that's kind of the customer piece. And then, so Flatiron, was that on your 7/17/70?
Yeah.
Where were they on that kind of?
So they were on the 7 when we invested.
So then how, I'm trying to understand how your brains work in this wonderful building. So you look at this brand, you see that they've got customers around the queuing outside, there's fandom.
Great metrics.
You know. You see that, and we're going to get into kind of the KPIs because a lot of listeners will want to know that shortly. But from when you're looking at it and you're analysing it, say in this room, how are you looking at it to the path to 70? Do you see what I'm trying? That's what I'm trying to get to. Do you see what I mean?
So we quite often talk here about back from the future. So when we look at a brand, we'll go 5 years out. What would this brand look like? Where would it be? What should the team be? What do we need to have in place so that it's attractive for the next buyer for the business? And so, you know, we, as I say, we talk about back from the future and we map it and we think about, so, you know, by year 3, we should be here, and by year 5 there. And that's through everything. You know, what would supply chain need to do? Is there enough beef? Where are we going to get all of those things? is vegetarianism going to be so big that people don't want to have flat iron steaks anymore? You have to look at all the different aspects that go into the brand and take a judgment call on, whether you believe you've got all of these things can be put in place. Will there be a buyer at exit? What would the team need to look like? Where would the founder want to be at that point? What skill sets doesn't the team have that it will need to have if it's going to be 70 sites? So how do we build that in? And how do we do that sustainably? So lots of businesses put in lots of infrastructure, lots of people, and they start losing money. And so you've got to think about, how do we do this sustainably so that we're still profitable? And the market has changed significantly. It used to be just grow. Didn't matter. Profits will come. I'd say the market now is much more focused on profit and growth. And, it's tougher. Yes. You've got to do both rather than just growth.
I have just discovered a secret weapon. Please don't tell anyone. This secret weapon helps you get listed, stay listed, and most importantly, grow. This secret weapon is being used by absolutely banging brands like Bold Bean Co., Perfect Head, Neat, Trip, and Cheeky Panda. No wonder they're absolutely smashing it. But look, are you ready to get your mitts on this secret weapon and absolutely smash it too? I am so thrilled to announce our brand new podcast partner, Northstar. What is Northstar, I hear you thinking? Northstar is a monthly subscription to an online platform giving you access to category data, category insights, anytime, any place, anywhere. It's basically the Netflix for challenger brands. It levels the playing field. Why do you need category data? Well, the first thing is making your pitch speak the buyers and retailers language is so important. It's going to help you unlock more listings, unlock deeper distribution with existing clients, back the right NPD, and actually understand how your competition is performing. But the even better news, are you ready to rock and roll at your next range review? You no longer need to hire a full-time category manager. Instead, just parachute in Northstar when your next Waitrose, Sainsbury's or Tesco range reviews coming up. They're your outsourced in-house partner. Save money. Their team will come in. They'll help you prep, plan and smash your next range review. I'm so excited to be partnering with Northstar. Check them out in the episode description below. Delighted to announce the extension of our partnership with the wonderful Billy and Paul from Mackenzie Jones, but even more exciting, they have just launched a brand new brand as part of Mackenzie Jones called MKJ Ignite. MKJ Ignite is a recruitment firm which specialises full shebang, focus entirely on challenge brand space. They work with some incredible brands, Lucky Saint, Goodrays, Purdy and Fig, Hunt and Gather and Real Superfoods. They can support with your hiring needs across all levels, top to bottom, junior entry-level jobs, all the way through up to MD and CEO level. So if you're looking for a field sales stomper, a sales wizard, an ops guru, a supply chain sensei, you name it, MKJ Ignite can help you out. And look, if you're looking to wet your whistle, ignite your curiosity, then check out the poddy we recorded with them back in July. Laden with wisdom, all about like do's and don'ts of hiring and like how to create the perfect job description. You will love it. What are your thoughts on trends and following trends? Yeah. Because I think I interviewed Rory Sutherland on do you know who Rory Sutherland is, the guy at Ogilvy, on Monday, and he was saying you can't like short term you can't really see what a trend is. Yeah. Because even though if something is 5 years, in the grand scheme of things, that's bugger all.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on founders building trend-led brands? Is that, yeah?
I think that's a big risk area that we tend to avoid. So at the moment, for example, you'll see a lot of brands growing incredibly fast on TikTok. And that's great. They're doing a brilliant job. They're growing very well. But, we've all seen what happens, it was Facebook and it was Instagram, TikTok, what's next? And so putting all your eggs in one basket, whether it's a channel or a geography or a trend, can be risky. And so we think about what are the macro long-term trends. We can see, for example, that health and wellness, it's been an ongoing rising trend for people to think about their preventative health. NHS is overstretched. We've had COVID. Undoubtedly, people are thinking about how can I do more to look after myself? Because, all the safety things that used to be there are creaking at the seams. So now I've got to take control of my own well-being. And so that's a macro trend that we'll follow. And it means we think about, so if that's the trend, what are the pockets of demand that we're going to see growing? Mental health is one, for example, where we all know this is an ever-growing problem that people have. So, are there opportunities there? Look at our investments in Ancient and Brave and Wild Nutrition. That's because we see people wanting to supplement themselves, but not just with any old supplement. People have become more savvy. We have ways to research that we didn't used to have 20 years ago. You just had the shelf in Boots or Holland & Barrett. Now you can look up and research the brand and what's behind it and what's in it and why is this one better and different. And premiumization is a trend in itself. So, we're looking at the longer macro trends, definitely not. You can see a lot of clothing brands, for example, that are here today, gone tomorrow. And
so how do you differentiate the difference between a fad and a trend? Because that's something I find interesting. So I remember, I'll tell you, I did cheese, right? Yeah. But before that, for a very small moment in time, I actually sold juice in Wales, of all places. And then we were trying to sell it in Liverpool Street Station. Was character assassination because everyone walking out would have, you go past Starbucks, Pret, Boots, so they'd have their coffee and their juice, and I'm trying to flog it for, £7. But that was the juice trend when everyone was going into juice. And then obviously now that kind of fad/trend, whatever you want to call it, has kind of dissipated. But there's Moji still kicking around and press. Yeah. But there were a lot more people back then in that. Yeah. How do you kind of what's the art of that, I suppose?
So I suppose for us is understanding why a particular brand is better and different. We talk about better and different all of the time here. So what makes this better and different? If it's just a juice that anybody can produce, put a label on and sell, you're probably going to find it quite hard, and you're going to find you're value engineering it down and you're not going to make the money. But if
value engineering it down, what do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by you're inevitably it becomes price competitive because it's a commodity.
With you.
That's what I really mean.
Yeah.
And but if you are doing something unique, a particular process, or you're adding a particular formulation to that juice that nobody else has worked out how to get that molecular structure into the juice, then suddenly you've got something better and different. And so for us, that better and different is what distinguishes a brand from being something that, is riding a crest of a wave to something that has longevity and can address the trend, but it's not trendy, faddy. It's got legs.
So say, for example, gut health's all the rage at the minute.
Yeah.
Whether that's... in 5 years' time we could do another podcast, and it's all these these drinks that everyone's doing, these prebiotic, high-biotic. I don't understand. It's convoluted. So say you were to look at that as a category specifically, what would you, with this better? I like this whole better and different kind of axis almost. What would it take for a brand like that to kind of pique your interest?
So I think, does it have any clinical evidence? Is there any proof that this is better and different? That is not just, I've put some stuff in a box and it's a gut health product. It needs some science behind it. So, I think there are lots of gut health things out there, kefirs, kombuchas, they're all growing. Probably not all going to win because there isn't enough shelf space, because they're not different enough. So who are the ones who've got something unique? And again, it's just about proof, data, consumer perception. How can you say this one really works? In Wild Nutrition, for example, we're doing clinical studies. So we've just done one on magnesium, one on vitamin D, looking at the levels of absorption and retention of a food-grown material versus standard high street spray, oral spray, or pill. And we have the evidence now that it stays in the body longer and it is more easily absorbed. And that, for us, is building a moat around the better and different. You can really see it.
Yes.
I was thinking about clothing and Olebar Brown. Why did we think that had longevity? It's because when Adam started that business, he really thought about a tailored swim.
Olebar Brown.
Yeah, the swimwear brand, men's resort wear, now all year round wear, but which we sold to Chanel. And, Chanel don't buy a lot of businesses. It clearly had a very clear longevity in their minds. But it started with Adam thinking about a tailored 9-piece, I can't remember if it was 9 or 14-piece tailored swim short.
Yeah.
Nobody else had thought about that.
When you say 9-piece tailored,
so it was tailored, cut as if a tailor had designed it. So it's got, whether it's 9 or 14 different elements.
Yeah.
It's not just somebody sewing up the seams and putting a waistband on it that's elasticated and putting a pretty print on it and then selling it for X. It's somebody who's really deconstructed. How do you make the most comfortable swim short? How do you make the most quick drying? How do you make people look good in it? How do you put a print on it that's really unique and distinctive? And that's what we mean by better and different. And you've got a hero product there that you can then build a business around, rather than just another swim short. There's lots of swim shorts out there.
What was the better and different with Popcorn? Because...
Yep, that's a good question, because it's popcorn at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I think it came, you'll have heard Cass tell the story of the cement mixer, the car spray paint gun as a way of flavouring the popcorn. And that was about how do you get that spread of flavour around the corn as it pops. And so I think the better and different was in the way they produced it, the quality of the corn. Then I think it was a lot about the marketing, just, addressing a millennial audience who were looking for a better, healthier tasting snack that wasn't salty, crispy, fill you up full of rubbish. So, it can be as much about the product as it can be the way you market it.
Yeah. Because that's interesting. So the better and different can be product-led, but also the kind of the storytelling aspect as well. So how did, kind of going back to the 7/17/70, how did Popcorn go from sort of the 17 to 70, like that journey? Because of that, again, I've sat opposite Perry, I've sat opposite William Chase. Like I know a lot about going to that 7 to 17. Mm-hmm. I'm not that I've never done it right, but I've spoken to enough people. But the knowledge gap I've got is how a brand goes on to that 70 stage.
Yeah. So again, I think it's about being rigorous about your priorities as you grow and thinking about if we want to get to that 70, a lot of people just say, more SKUs, let's just have more SKUs. Actually, with Proper, it was more about, okay, we've got popcorn. There's still lots we can innovate in popcorn. So, whether it's a collaboration with, I think they just did one with KFC, which was a really interesting limited edition. So there's lots still to do in the core category, but then they moved into lentil chips because they could see the market was demanding, the crisp market is huge, but there wasn't a healthy alternative. So let's move into lentils. Let's just start with 2 or 3 flavours. We'll give them exclusively to a retailer. We'll build that traction. We'll build consumer demand. And they do that bit really well. They thought really hard about why do we have a right to win in this category against the big players? There's deep pockets. There's plenty of money in the category. So they were really thoughtful about the right to win. What gives us a right to play? And it was on taste, and it was on flavour, and it was on meeting a particular customer need at a particular time in the day. It was, thinking about how does we make the pack attractive for the consumer, and all of that needs different skill sets, so some in-house, some outsourced, and it's about what can we do well in-house, and really, if we're really honest with ourselves, what can't we do well in-house? They did a lot in-house, actually, did all design work in-house. They had a great commercial director. They worked their relationship with the retailer very, very well, and over-invested in just building that relationship, top to bottom in a retailer. Because people move so fast in retail, you've got to have irons in every part of the organisation.
When you say top to bottom, by that you mean, so is that like having
director level, right down to store level? How do you build relationships? How do you get them to want to put you on the shelf? They've got thousands and thousands of products, but you want them. So it was down to little. I think it's all often about the detail. They had thought about the carton, the outer box that goes on the shelf, and how to make that colourful and bright and interesting, so that the staff in the warehouse would think, oh, yeah, going to put that out. That looks fun, as opposed to a boring brown box. So I think all those, it's focusing on the detail, but knowing what the big prize is and making sure the two are working to the same end game. Work from the detail up to the big, know what the big is and what the important things are to deliver, but don't get distracted on the way. Don't try and do too much. A lot of people try and do too much.
Yeah. What you said there about the top, the building the relationship with the retailer from all the way to the top, all the way to the bottom, I think's so interesting.
It's not easy to do.
It's not easy, yeah, I couldn't say. Because obviously it's when you're like a team of say 7, it's like where say you are someone listening to this is a team of 7 and they don't have they may not have the investment yet, they may not have the resource, and as you said, you can't do too many things. Like, what are some of those kind of, again, it's all case by case, right? But some of the things they should be focusing on, and what do you see most founders kind of maybe get a little bit new shiny toy, getting distracted with
So new. I mean, founders, entrepreneurs love making new stuff. So the worst thing they do is go, I've got this great idea. I'm going to add this, and then I'm going to do that, and actually you leave behind this sort of orphan child that you've bred, and you're not nurturing it and feeding it and loving it and growing it. So I think often it's that sort of excitement of the new, trying to pull people back, just say, no, listen, we've got to make this kid grow up, and it's got to learn how to walk, it's got to sort of crawl, walk, run is the way we think about it. So how can it do all of that? And then when it can run, yes, maybe you can have the shiny new toy. But I think just, even if your relationship is with one buyer, it's just thinking about what can I do to make that buyer's life easy. They've got hundreds of brands they're trying to manage. They're really time poor. They, are away, they're out, they're traveling, they're doing all this. So how do I make their life easier? How do I find category data, consumer data? How do I make their life more fun? I mean, again, Proper were really good at just making it fun to work with Proper. So the buyers would always remember the Proper day because it was a fun day. And so I think it's those little moments, those little thoughtful details that can just help you build a better relationship.
Yeah. I've got a quote here from Cassandra, actually, which is talking about yourself. She says, it's the pushing and the probing which is so important for us. The power of questions is so important. Libby, she does that in the right way. Libby, she always seems to ask the pertinent questions. Libby is an incredibly impressive lady with a wealth of experience. I really believe the smart answer lies in the dumb question, or actually it's people often think about answers, but it's actually, if you can start asking interesting questions, that's the way to frame it. What are some of those questions you were asking them at board meetings or in meetings, if you can remember?
Sometimes you just be asking, why are we trying to do this when we haven't sorted that out? Shall we just put that on hold? No, it's business critical. And you go, well, you're not going to do both things well. So shall we just actually focus on getting this done before we do that?
Is there an example with Propercorn?
I'd say it's a while back.
Or any other businesses?
You see it across the portfolio where, as I say, people are always trying to launch the next thing. And you go, yeah. We've got our consumers, I think that's the thing people forget. You live and breathe when you're building a brand, the range of products. So you think everybody knows all your products. What actually is the truth is they might know one or two. And you go, but you've got all these hidden gems here that people still don't know about. So how about we sell those first rather than invent something new? And you need newness because the retailers and the consumers demand it. But knowing that doing 2 things a year is fine. Don't worry about having 10 new things. Just do 2. You haven't got the airtime to persuade the consumer that they've got to buy this new shiny thing. They don't even know about product 3 and 4.
Oh my God, I am so excited. It feels like Hungary is finally swimming in the big leagues. I can't believe this. It's absolutely mental. But delighted to announce that Big Fish, yes, Big Fish, are partnering the podcast. Perry's been on the podcast 3 times. Listeners absolutely love it. Some of our most downloaded and cherished episodes of all time. But Big Fish are behind literally so many brands in your cupboard, in your weekly shop. Charlie Bigham, Year Valley, Tyrrell's, Clipper Tea, Goo, Rana. Mate, the list is longer than the River Nile. But they also share risk and invest in brands that they really believe are a force for good. That are brands that they believe are going to be the next big thing. Like Howder, the snack that gives back. But even more exciting news, Big Fish want to speak to the next wave of small challenger food and drink brands that are destined for big things. The raconteurs, the movers, shakers, buccaneering visionaries. So look, if you want to speak to Big Fish and just have a chat, get your brand in front of them, then drop me a message. My mate Louis from Local Beer, Amazing Beer, was in their office, aka La Fish Bowl, last week chatting to Perry, Freddie and the Big Fish crew. So drop me a message if you would like to speak to them. Bohemi, our beloved sponsor, are helping build the fastest growing challenger food and drink brands. Look, if you're a small brand just starting out and need your first indie stockist, your first 100 stockists to wholesale, Bohemi are the platform to categorically speed that up. But if you're a big brand wanting to get bigger, Bohemi are also insane. They make field sales marble smooth, silky slick. They're just epic. Ollie's been on this podcast twice actually. They saw a 29% uplift in sales when using Bohemi to check major malt listings availability. Insane. 29% uplift by downloading an app. Insane. Lucky Saint, my boy Aaron Duff, who's coming on this podcast in a couple of weeks, he uses it to manage a team of 30 people, and Lucky Saint have unlocked 500 draft listings by using Bohemi. Look, you've got to get involved with this stuff. It's absolutely insane, and it will categorically change your life. It's just the sickest platform. I use it all the time at Islands. There's a David Ogilvy quote which I love, but I'm going to kind of butcher it. But it's like you're never forget you're advertising to a marching band, yes, not a standing army. I.e., the consumer's moving.
Yep.
So like, I think people get so bored of saying the same message. It's like the best marketing, I think, is the one you're bored of.
Yep. And
then again, David Hyatt's he's kind of sums up what you're saying so deliciously, which is your old gold is someone's new gold.
Yeah.
So it's like the skew that you're just bored shitless of.
Yeah.
It's the one that like someone needs to know about.
Yeah. Or somebody else is going to come in and say, oh, they're not really loving that bit of gold over there. I think I'll have that pit.
Yes.
And so I think you're constantly trying to say consumers are moving. I can't remember what the stats are, but it used to be something like you'd see 5,000 different brand images in your daily life.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot for the brain to process and to remember. And so how do you make sure that you are the one that people remember and tell them and tell them and tell them again? So often in MPD process, you'll see, we're going to launch this in May and then we'll launch something in September. And, the May one gets forgotten by June. And then we're on to the shiny new one for September. And you go, but you only told them once about that new product. And they might have blinked and missed it. Now we have this constant feed on our socials.
Yeah.
You just, as you say, consumers are running. They're not marching. They've got so much new stuff that they can access.
What are some of the other questions other than like, is this the right thing to do now? Like, do we need to do this? What are some of the other questions you were
Have we got the right people? That's a big question. Have we got the skill set to deliver what we need to deliver? Do we believe this person can grow into that role, or do we believe that person will be able to execute what we need them to execute well? And so often it's about the people. It's, challenging them to think about it. And sometimes it's challenging, and again, we'll come on to succession, challenging the founder to think, are you the right person to be doing this role now? And because they've done every role.
Okay, let's talk about let's talk about that now, because that is this is
it's the most uncomfortable conversation.
We've opened
often
up Pandora's box. So because I think there's numerous things in this. I think I actually I really believe you do need kind of an ego in business to a point to get the thing going. Absolutely. And I think, especially in the UK, we kind of tall poppy syndrome. We kind of, as I say, lambast ego. But I think that everyone's got an ego, and I think you need it to run through walls.
Yeah.
Because no one else is going to. When Cassandra's making her popcorn in her dad's
kitchen
cement mixer, like, you need an ego to get that into Sainsbury's, right? But then it becomes a point where Giles Brooke calls it founderitis, which I thought was a really nice way of saying it.
Nice expression.
Yeah, nice expression, which is, the founder still thinks they're the founder. It's almost like the 3-year-old still, not saying all founders are 3-year-old, but like they still want to play with the toys, and it's like, actually, it may not be your toys to play with. So what are the... describe the succession plan. Like you've it's not your first rodeo. Like, you've done this numerous times. Like, what are some of the kind of watch outs with that?
Yeah. So if I go again to back from the future, we would probably start by saying to the founder, look, if we're going to build this business to this level, do you still really want to be running it when we exit? And more often than not, they might not have an answer. They might say, oh, I think so, or I don't know, or no. But we start with that conversation so that at least we get the question of succession on the table. And because you don't want to put people off, you don't want to say, oh, no, you've done a great job now, bye. That's not going to work. And they have their magic. But it is about just starting to get them thinking about, what does their future look like? What do they want to be doing? And how can we enable that? So if a founder says, I don't really see myself running a 50, 100 million pound business, I don't really want to do that, then that's our job, is to help them recruit in and build a team around them. That means they have the option to either stay or go. And that means defining a role for them. And usually that role is a brand guardian, brand champion role, brand ambassador role, whatever you like to call it. And it means that they still bring their magic to the brand, but they allow the people who are frankly probably better at being a COO or a CFO or a CEO. Most founders are bored by the day-to-day running of a business. Not all, but most. I'd say they don't want to deal with HR issues every day. They don't want to have to worry about the numbers every day in minute detail. They don't really want to think about the strategy. They just want to do what they do really, really well. And you'll have founders who are very self-aware and already know that they're not the people for the long term. And you'll have other founders who, as you say, they can't let go. It's really hard. It's their baby. They know everything about this business, but they don't actually know everything about the business because it's got too big for them to have their arms around it. And so they're making decisions without all the information about a certain function or area. And that's where it becomes dangerous, I think. They want control, but they don't know everything. And somebody else probably knows more than them. And that, it's uncomfortable. It is, you're bringing a child, raising it, and then you're having to let it go. And that's hard.
Completely. And how do you navigate those conversations with founders?
With delicacy, I would say.
But is there an art to that? Because I think there's a lot of...
I think there is. I think you have to have a very trusted relationship. So, when we invest, we've typically been talking to a brand for 3 to 4 years and the founder, and we've built a trusting relationship where they value what we can bring. And it means you can have a conversation about it, but you're not going to go day one. Oh, by the way, you're not going to be here in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
But you might be saying, our job is to get you what you want. Loads of money if that's what you want. No job if that's what you want. A role if that's what you want. But if we don't have the conversation, it becomes a very uncomfortable relationship because things will crack at the seams. And, the job of being a founder and, as you say, busting through walls. And I'm so full of admiration for people who start businesses. It's extraordinary what they do. But when it's 7 million, you probably have to bust through walls in a different way than you did at 1 million. And again at 17, because it's not about busting through a wall. Actually, it's about a very professionalized, process-driven, structured way of doing things that has some magic, rather than just busting through a wall.
Yes.
There's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people said to me, like, would you ever... Because that's when I saw things get more professional. I didn't particularly like, but what I like doing is just basically running through walls or making things happen.
And lots of people are really good at that, and that's great. But
that's what basically a podcast is constantly. So it means it never has to really mature because it's just constantly you're trying to get hold of people. It's like constantly new business is what it is, which I get a buzz from, which is, but it is, I think it is having the self-awareness to know how that thing, or your baby you've created to changes you, is going to change you in many respects. So we talked before we would kind of hit the record button, Libby, is so now with the kind of LinkedIn and the brands are becoming personal brands are becoming more synonymous with brands. I think more so than ever before. Like if you compare the brands of today with the brands of, say, the Innocent, Tyrrell's, Goo back in the day.
It's the influencer influence.
Exactly. So like now you've got brands where the actual founder's name's on the product. I think we've talked about, brands kind of having the founders posting on LinkedIn. How does that affect the succession plan? Because, the founder may not be able to be kicking around.
So it's again, it's a conversation you need to have. So thinking about, because some founders want to build their personal brand for a future life.
Yes.
I'm the authority on, and which is fine. But it's not fine if you're strategic buyer. Then the founder says, "Oh, by the way, I'm not going to be there," and you've built this whole profile around the founder. That's not going to work. So it is about growing more faces of the brand and disseminating that sort of face of brand so that there is not that dependency on the founder. And, they might well want to still be the face of the brand, and that's great. But if they don't want to be, we have to start, really 3 years before exit thinking about how do we find other faces for this brand, other influencers, other people who talk to camera and make it feel very personal so that it's not just them, because otherwise it's a risk at exit. So, this world of influencer-led brands, I would say to people, just be quite thoughtful about, do you always want to be associated with that brand? Do you want to be the person who always has to front the brand? And if you do, great. But quite often people don't. You get, having to do things to camera every day, being the person that's on the social all the time. Your life is changing. You've got kids, you've got home, you've got other things that you want to do. So I just say to people, think about it.
Yeah, common theme I'm getting from you, Libby, is like this calm kind of prudence and the ability to look into the future. what I wanted to ask you about, and then we'll get into kind of the 101 of how to actually go and sell your brand, get in contact with you guys. But let's talk about Pitching the Piano and your kind of personal journey and some of the kind of insights and you took from that journey, that because obviously it informed what you're doing now. Because I think that's really interesting kind of.
I mean, it's a long time ago, but it's still relevant, I think. And
so tell me, so your first store was in Fulham. Talk to me.
I'll start about where the idea came from, because at that time, Piper was a consulting business that worked with big corporate brands to try and reinvent themselves, very customer obsessive. Where was the market going? What do consumers want and need? How do you make that relevant to the big corporate brand? And Pitcher and Piano came out of us looking at the pub market, essentially, and going, there's not really anything. I mean, I was quite young then. It seems a lifetime ago. But there's not really anything for young people that isn't spit and sawdust pub or buttoned up wine bar and nothing in between. And so Crispin and I, we were doing some work for a brewing client. We sort of developed this idea about, well, where would you like to go? What would it feel like? How, what's the purpose? And the purpose was, you're going to meet friends. You don't really want to queue at the bar. You want to feel homely. As a woman, you want to feel safe. And you want to have a really nice experience. So why don't the drinks come to you rather than you have to go and queue at the bar for the drinks? Why don't we have sofas? Why don't we have some tinkling music in the background? Because then you've got something to talk about if you're on a date or if you're with, just waiting there, sort of feeling a bit uncomfortable. So how could we make this feel home from home? And that was the genesis of Pitcher and Piano. It was, as a picture of jug and piano and music and everything else besides. And so the first one was in Fulham Road.
Whereabout? I used to live in Fulham, actually.
Yeah, it was sort of down the far end of Fulham Road towards Putney, just Monster Road, around there.
Yeah.
And it was an old pizza restaurant. And, it was a pretty unloved site. And I think we were, like entrepreneurs, we were very naive. We'd never been in this market. We didn't know how to operate a business like that. But we thought we had a great idea. And so we opened the first one, and it was, it was a huge success. You sort of open, think, is anybody going to turn up? And they did, and they came in their droves, and it was very successful very quickly. And I think that was great. And then we opened 2, and then we opened 3. And
sorry to interrupt, just quickly. So did Piper proceed? So you and Crispin. So I thought you'd set up, and this is where my research may have escaped me. So I thought you'd sold Pitcher and Piano, then set up Piper. What was the chronology?
No. So Piper existed before as this brand strategy consultancy.
Okay.
And then we started Pitcher and Piano, and that really led us to thinking about investing in brands.
Okay.
And the consultancy sort of died away as we did more and more brand investing. I think that's the way I would describe it. So, and it was the sale of Pitcher and Piano that gave us the sort of capital to then really focus just on investing. So we opened sites 2 and 3. They were going really, really well. Sites 4 and 5 was fine, going really well. But suddenly we're learning that we're not operators. We don't really know how to operate a bar. We don't know about the fact that people are going to come and steal urinals from the basement, carry them out through the top of which they did. We didn't know about the fact that people often put their hands in the till, or, all these operating things, hygiene, health, cleanliness, we were doing a good job for the market. But so that's when we thought we need to bring in an operator, somebody who knows how to run bars. So we brought in an operator to help run the business. And then we got to, I think, probably site sort of 5, 6, and we'd basically sort of done all of our own personal money to try and get this thing going. And that's where we started to go to the market and say, we need to raise some money, we want to grow this brand, and found, I suppose we were just a bit underwhelmed by the market at that point, which was, very male-dominated, men in suits, monitoring and measuring, not talking about brand, not understanding consumer, not feeling oh, I can see why this market's really growing and what they're doing is really great. So because we were a bit underwhelmed, we thought, well, let's raise our own fund. It can't be that difficult. Entrepreneurs again, naive again. And we did, and we raised a little fund, and that helped grow Pitcher and Piano and some other brands. And then, as I say, we sold Pitcher and Piano in 97, I think it was. And that enabled us then to just focus on, fund investing, finding consumer. And people were asking us, how do you do this? How do you do that? What did you learn? And we wanted to be able to provide both the money and the expertise to other entrepreneurs based on our own experience.
Yeah. The different and better thing is it's kind of interesting starting at this point and then going into kind of how you've come up with these things.
Yeah.
And I think what you've said there is you kind of had spit and sawdust boozer, but there's where's the middle ground?
Yeah.
The actual better and different in that sweet spot.
Because people forget there was no Olebar one, or there was nothing. It literally was, you go into a stuck-up wine bar, or you go into an old boozer with sticky carpets and slightly sticky floor and not very nice beer.
But so we because it all sounded like it was all hunky dory, but there must have been a few challenges along that.
Absolutely.
So how long was the Pitcher and Piano thing going until you sold it? So that
Probably about 8 years, I think it was.
8 years. Okay,
yeah.
cool. So what was some of a question I ask a lot of guests is, there's a book I love called The Obstacle is the Way, and I always believe we've got our own personal or business obstacle, but retrospectively it paves the way forward. I'd love to know what your kind of obstacle was, the way on that Pitcher and Piano journey was.
Well, I think definitely the whole recognising that we weren't operators, just admitting to ourselves that somebody could do this better than we could.
Yeah.
That was one. I think opening the first one out of London, always a big thing for hospitality.
Where was that?
I'm trying to remember where the first one out of London was. I think it was Newcastle, but I'm old. And it's a long time ago and I can't remember. But, for a lot of hospitality brands, that is a big step because you're known in a small market. People chat about Pitcher and Piano and, they've opened one in William the Fall Street. Oh, they've got one in King's Road or whatever. But then you're in Newcastle and you're a whole new, who's this brand? Never heard of them. So that's always a challenge because you're remote managing staff, you're unknown, so you've got to think about marketing to a new audience. Pricing might be a bit different, competition is different. So always that first step out of your home territory, whether it's actually you started out of London, you're coming into London, or the other way around, it doesn't really matter. So that was a challenge. And then pretty soon what we discovered is people burn out in bars. You're working very long hours. You are...
As in you personally?
Staff. No, the staff in the people running the bars, they run out of steam because, you're working all day, all night. It's high energy, a smile on the face, or you're in the kitchen at the back sweating over something. And so we thought we can't just sort of hope that people carry on. We should address it face on. So we started something called the Pitcher and Piano Academy. And the idea was drawn, I think, probably from the military. It was sort of a short service commission. You come 3 years with us, we will train you to be able to run your own business. You could choose to stay after that, but some people might want to or might have burnt out. So we felt that far better to have 3 great years of somebody where we invest in them and they invest in us than, a year or so and then they go, I'm exhausted and I want to move on. So Pitcher and Piano Academy, it was designed to have different modules to teach you finance, to teach you marketing, to teach you how to think about profit, teach you how to think about staff management, appraisals, all sorts of things. And so it became a way of us being able to firstly retain people, which is an ever-increasing problem today for all brands. Yeah. But secondly, when we came to sell the business, we had a roster of upcoming managers that meant the acquiring company could grow this business and there would be managers ready to go. So they felt they had a ready pipeline of managers so they could...
Was that intentional?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so smart.
It was.
That's so smart. Because there's, again, you hear these stories of teams, founding teams, as they get bigger, kind of just cataclysmic kind of thing happens and they all just go. I interviewed, and I also think there's this mentality of founders wanting to work their teams to the bone because they work to the bone.
Yeah.
I think...
yes, that's very true.
Yeah, it's like founder, and actually, because someone's got options or shares in the business doesn't mean it's their business. No. But I think that's an interesting. You could talk about that's a whole conversation in itself. But I interviewed George Cruz, who's he was an England rugby player, got to the World Cup final, played for Saracens, won literally everything you can in club rugby. And I was asking him about how he's building his team, and he was like, "Well, in rugby, pretty much every rugby player does a burnout because it's 1,000%.
Yep.
We want you working this. And he said one of his learnings was that when he's now got his CBD brand called 4-5, is he's like, okay, so one of the questions he asks, again, the answer lies in the question, is like, okay, so how do we keep talent? I don't think founders ask that question enough. And how do we avoid burnout? So he's got this 80% rule, which basically means we never want you to be going to 100%. So the team finish at 4 p.m. every day. So there's like this never burnout mentality. And I think that's really interesting.
And you're right. I think it's not talked about enough. I mean, and retaining talent particularly in hospitality now, for example, is really difficult. So finding ways of making this the best place to work. Hickories were particularly good at this.
So Hickories, for listeners, that's like a smokehouse.
Yes, barbecue smokehouse restaurant chain, which had three Hickories when we invested, had about 14, 15 when we divested, sold to Green King. I think they'll probably have 40 odd next year, and it'll be heading to being a brand legend, 100 million run rate, I think, so next year. And again, for them, it was about, we've got a lot of young people. How do we make them feel safe? How do we make the parents feel that their young people are safe working in this environment? How do we look after the chefs? Chefs are, yes. It's a real skill to keep chefs. How do we make people have very clear progression through the organisation? How do we celebrate success? So the founders of that business, and they still do it today, they do a roadshow. They go to every Hickories, every site, once a year, and they'll sit down with every team member individually and talk to them about how they're feeling, what are the issues, where can we make things better. It's that kind of attention to your staff that's so important to make them feel valued, because it's a tough game out there for everyone. So I think that retention point, and even if you're fourth grade brand, it's pet food. So of course people are going to want to bring their dogs into them. How do we make that manageable? So you haven't got 10 dogs running around the office distracting everybody, but you don't say to it, no, you can't bring your dog. You've got to work with your people, help them have the experience, help them live and breathe. We talk about living and breathing the brand. We try and do that here. So if we're looking at any brand, we all go and eat it, consume it, test it, whatever it is. I mean, I've eaten cat food, I've eaten dog food, I've eaten everything.
Yeah, sure.
Because you want to feel as close to that brand as you possibly can. And that's important to make your staff feel that they are building. I think we talked about this at the beginning.
Yeah. So we've talked, and I think what's really interesting is what I think is super insightful is the fact that you've got this retention program, but actually it's not just about keeping talent now. It's like when you actually do exit, it's that ability to look into stuff back to the future or back from the future. I think.
Back from the future. And actually that's important, even at a board level. So you'll often, when we're thinking about the exit, we'll be thinking, well, we've got the board. We just need to make sure this next layer down could step into the board shoes, because some people might choose to leave. So you're always thinking about the next level, the next people.
Yeah, let's swim down, always thinking about the exit. So let's just pick a brand like, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of a brand. Let's just say X brand is in Waitrose, Sainsbury's, Tesco, Whole Foods, Planet Organic, maybe doing a bit of distribution in Ireland. I mean, this is kind of the tip.
Yeah.
Maybe probably the easier way to say is a kind of 5 to 6 million mark.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of brands, a lot of people I've spoken to say that's kind of a sticking point. That's your 7, right?
Yep.
When you say they come to Piper, like, what are you looking for? What are the things you're looking for? Not in terms of the brand and the better, different, and the founder and all that stuff. What are you looking for in terms of kind of the numbers? Like, what's
The growth.
Yeah, what would basically be like, right, we want to get this brand in here today to have a chat.
So normally we think about we've got to triple sales, and then whoever buys the business probably needs to at least double or triple sales again. So you're thinking even beyond the 5 years. You're thinking, okay, the next person, they've got to know that there's growth. So you're pitching your growth well out in advance. You're going, okay, could this business get to 50, 100 million? It may be at 7 or 17 now, but can it get there, or where can it get to? Is there enough headroom for us and for the next buyer of the business? That could be UK, it could be UK and international. A lot of people sort of go, oh, yeah, I've got international. We service 35 international markets, and you go, yeah, but you're doing tiny little bit in every market. That doesn't count for anything. Far better to do 1 million in one market and prove a market has potential than lots of little markets. But often founders think it's great to talk about, I distribute to 40 different countries.
That's
doesn't count for anything.
That's the status signalling thing.
Yeah.
It's something you want to talk about at networking events, saying I'm in Costa Rica, but it's like, come on.
Yeah. So we're always thinking about the headroom for growth.
Yeah.
And is there the headroom for growth? You've got to believe the market opportunity is there, that you've got a great tailwind, and that the market's growing, or you're growing your share of the market. And if you're fully distributed, that could be a bit of a problem for us. And it's very rare that they are 7 fully distributed across all the multiples in all the product categories they want to be in. So it's usually not a problem at that stage. Where we would probably go, is if someone says, oh, yeah, no, the UK's done now, I'm going to Europe. And you go, well, I haven't got any proof that it's going to work in Europe. So maybe not just now for us, because we like to have some proof that it is going to get traction. So I think those sort of exit considerations and investment considerations as well, and just have we got people. I don't think I can emphasize enough how important the people are. It's just so important. Is the founder backable? Can we work with them? Do they want to grow this business? Are they really hungry? But are they also self-aware? Have they built a good team around them? Can I see signs that they're ready to let go a bit and build a team around them? Because you don't want to just back one person, That's quite risky. They might swan off into the sunset. They might decide they're bored. They might whatever. So people is a very key part of both investment and divestment. Do I think this team can sit up in front of a Nestle, a Mars, whoever it is, and sell this business to those people such that they want to buy it and be a credible team, and for the big corporate to go, yeah, I want this team. I want to back this team. I can see they've got what it's going to take.
Hi guys, super quick one. So excited. Look, for years I've been badgering on about Hungry the podcast. You're probably bored to death. Thanks for putting up with me. But Hungry is also an agency, and we look after one amazing brand called Islands Chocolate. We've had a great time over the year. We've won listings at a load of wholesalers. We've won Milk and More. We've got our first grocery listing coming very soon, which is very sick. But what I'm thrilled to announce is Hungry is merging with HC Consulting. My boy Harry Clark and his wonderful team, he's an absolute G. They do brand strategy, new business and account management. But why I really love working with Harry and why we've got on so well over the last couple of months is Harry was actually the founder of the boozy Olebar Brown Pops. So he's been in the trenches, he's grafted his face off, he's had the sleepless nights, he's had the turmoil, he's had the triumph, he knows what it is to be a founder, he is a founder. And he's got a proven track record in grocery and out of home. Holy Moly Dips, The Gut Stuff, Savile Drinks, Remio Gelato. So if you're a brand and you're stuck, you're looking for like new business help, you're looking to scale, drop us a message, we'd love to chat. Thank you so much. Back to the old episode. So again, it's because I'm someone who thinks very short term, lives in the now, kind of just I'm not prudent at all. I've never had a plan, which is kind of, that's why I do a podcast and not try to build a brand, basically. You don't need to plan too far ahead. But what I find wild is how you guys can think in terms of like tripling and then tripling again. So the tripling again, what are some of the sort of macro factors that come into that? I know we talked about international as one kind of variable. So are you and say Crispin, you're sat in this meeting, there's things on the thing like I'm trying to get into that mindset of thinking.
It's quite data-y. I mean, you know, you know, you can find the data, you can look at the market size or what's called the total addressable market or the SAM or the TAM. And
SAM or TAM.
SAM or TAM, yeah. TAM is really total addressable. What's the market opportunity that we have here?
Yeah.
And so you're looking at quite a lot of data. I mean, if you're a hospitality business, you know, how many of these sites do we really think we can have before we start cannibalizing? Before, you know, if I've got a Flatiron, I can't remember how many in London. I feel we've got a long way to go in London still, but we want to prove out of London because that's going to be important to be able to say, yes, you could have a national chain. So you're always sort of looking at how big's the market, how big's the audience, how penetrated am I? If you're in pet food and you've got your fourth grade customer profile, you can say, we know there are X million of these customers in the UK who would have a dog, be prepared to spend this sort of money, buy wet food, buy dry food. Therefore, there are, you know, this is the size of the prize here in the UK alone. That's plenty to go for. And then when you add in treats, you know, and that market is bigger than the food market. So suddenly you've got another big audience to satisfy. So it's thinking about, you know, if we layer in where we are now, the distribution, the geography, the market opportunity, the product opportunity, you know, how much more have we got to go for?
And then so I'm going to ask some dumb questions now because I'm just totally curious. So then how does a brand actually begin to work with you? Like how does a deal get done? Like I know it's each their own and case by case, but
so we spend a lot of time going out there to meet brands. I mean, you know, we're proactively out there trying to meet brands who could be the next brand legends, building relationships with them. We'll host a lot of events. So we do something called Geek Meet, which is our digital event. So that's all e-commerce and digitally led brands. They come together. Sometimes it's 18 people in here. Sometimes it's 70 people hosted in Monica Vinader's offices or Bloom Wild's offices. We've done we've done an American-UK collaboration. So brands from over there and brands from here want to go over there. So we have our Geek Meets, we have our Founders Collectives where we invite brands to come and in a particular category or segment or with a particular issue to come and talk about it. This afternoon, there's a whole thing going on about TikTok, you know, what's everybody learned, how does TikTok. And these are all brands who might not be ready for us just yet. Some might be, some might not be, but they might be in the future. So for us, it's about having this amazing network. I think we've got, it's sort of 3,500, 4,000 brands on our database who we are, you know, to different degrees keeping in touch with, but we really want to build a relationship so that we know enough about them, they know enough about us, because first and foremost, as I say, it's trust and chemistry. Do they want to work with us? Do they believe we can help them? Will we enjoy working with them? Will they enjoy working with us? And that's so important. It's a marriage. You're going down the aisle for 5-6 years. It's a marriage. So you don't want a one-night stand. You want to have really built a relationship. So that's how it starts, and we get to know them. Some brands go to a corporate finance advisor and say, I want to raise some money, and can you help me do that? And there'll be a process, and that's all fine. Some brands don't want to use an advisor, will come direct to us and others and say, I'm raising money, do you want to invest? Then there's a sort of courtship that happens where we try and make sure what's called it's funny, we do our commercial due diligence early. Normally that happens when you've agreed terms, but we do it early because we want to work with the brand, understand their consumers, so we'll do a lot of consumer research with them, we'll do surveys for them, we will talk to buyers about them, we'll try and be in their world and understand the brand first, and then the more sort of legal, financial, IP due diligence comes later. But you're basically trying to get to a point where you feel good about the brand, good about the team, you know what their rough growth plan is. It doesn't have to be perfect. Then, if you can agree a deal, then you start the more sort of boring diligence, necessary but boring diligence.
Yeah. We don't have to go here, but just because people ask me to ask this, right? So the actual money, how the money works with it. So one thing I've been asked to kind of ask you, Libby, is how the multiples work of say you're at X revenue, because I think a lot of founders, and I interviewed William Kendall, who did Green and Blacks, and he was basically saying to me, he sees every investment deck and it's like ba-boom, 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 and then this hockey stick, right? And he was just like, what again, just realistically, every founder will probably have a deck that has that hockey stick growth curve in it.
Yep.
As you say, this
not going to happen.
Not going to happen. What are the pragmatic multiples you'd like to see?
So you can't give fixed multiple because every sector has a different way of valuing businesses. Sometimes it's a multiple of sales, sometimes multiple of EBITDA, and actually more and more it's a blend of sales and EBITDA.
What in food? What's the usual kind of?
Food is often sales multiple.
Yeah.
But increasingly people are looking at EBITDA.
Sure.
Beauty, more so sales, but still now EBITDA. I mean, as I say, the market has changed and EBITDA has become at least showing a path to profitability that is credible, if not being profitable, is really important now.
What about in something like a...
Tech is a whole different world.
Yeah. So that's another question someone's asked. My mate asked me to ask you, but again, go on to that. But say something like a Hickories or a Flatiron. How does that work? So
sometimes you'll look at site EBITDA, not overall company EBITDA, because often you're building a head office that's bigger than the number of sites you've got because you're building for the future. Sure. So as I say, every sector has its own little nuance. The way we think about it, yes, you get lots of these marvellous pictures that show you're going to suddenly grow hockey stick your EBITDA, hockey stick your sales. And you just have to be pragmatic and go, based on what we know about the market, the category, we've done 50-odd investments across a number of categories. You kind of know what feels real and what doesn't. You don't want to dampen ambition, so you applaud the ambition, but you also have to just take people on a journey and say, if we had slightly more sustainable growth, we might get more bottom line profit. So you get more multiple at the end if you exited with this EBITDA run, that EBITDA. So you are trying to help people see sustainable business growth rather than, and I don't mean that in the ESG sense, I mean just how do we make this not a risky roller coaster venture. We're not venture investors. And so there's a big difference between venture investors and us. Venture investing is make 10 investments, hope one works. We're 2 to 3 investments, they've all got to work. So we really care about how we make them work. And it's just a very different mindset. Both are fine because you have to have this to feed this.
Sure.
But yes, I think the valuation, what often happens is someone's friend tells them their business is going to be worth X, and they'll have that X in their mind and they can't get rid of it. They just think, oh yeah, my business is going to be worth 100 million. You go, well, probably not just yet.
Yes.
So we do lose deals. I mean, there are deals we can't do because valuation is, we're just not going to make the money for our investors. We don't believe that the business can grow as fast as it says it can. And we have to walk away. We have to be grown up about it.
What are some of the deals that have like...
No, I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah,
I'm not going to tell you that.
So I understand that. So you have the hockey stick growth, and you can say kind of the inflated growth curve, but at the same time, you still 3x and then have to 3x again. So even though it may not be hockey stick, it still at some point has to go like that. Yeah. So that's why those two are kind of not opposing things, but those. How do you calculate that in your head?
Well, that's why you can't overpay at the beginning, because then you can never get your 3x return. Because if you pay too much up front, you're going to have to sell it for 250 million, and that might not be realistic. So it's very important that you pay a fair price, and we're not chippers. We don't undercut. We'd rather walk away. We don't like. Saying, oh yes, we'll pay you this, and then coming in and saying, oh actually we didn't mean that, we mean this. That's just, it's not in our nature. It's not the way we do business. If we say a price, fair price, reflective of all the hard work that's gone on, but sometimes you're looking at things and you're thinking, yeah, it's not as polished a diamond as the founder thinks it is.
Sure.
How am I going to price that in? And you might say, well, I think we could grow it a bit faster, or I think actually our added value could make a difference. Or you might go, I just can't justify that valuation. I just can't get there. Sad, but so we do, but we don't go very far down the track. I think we've learned you can spend a lot of time kissing a lot of frogs. It's far better to come to a view early and cut your losses and not try and play the game.
So then you offer X brand money. So say I don't know, it's Dan's, not Diet Coke, but Dan's whatever, right? Dan's Donuts. So you offer Dan. I'm sat here opposite you. Like I've got the better, the different. I've got a great team. I'm self-aware. This is all an example, right?
Yeah.
You've thought, okay, how we 3x this, and then how we 3x again. What? I know,
2 to 3x is the next one after us, but yes.
Okay, 2 to 3x. So then, do you would buy the business, or do you buy a percentage, or how does it usually work?
So different. Again, venture is different, and big PE is different. Big private equity.
I thought they were like P as in money.
Big scale. Big private equity versus us in sort of small to mid market. We are quite flexible. Each deal is bespoke.
Sure.
And some people just want money into the business. Some people want money into the business and money out, sort of insurance policy. Some people feel like I've spent 5 years, my blood, sweat and tears.
When you say money out, money in, money out.
So money into the business or money out to the individual.
Okay.
The founder.
Yes.
Or founders, where they go, I'd quite like to just pay off the mortgage. I've got school kids. If I just bank a bit now, I've still got an important share of the business, but I bank a bit now. Probably is going to make me less risk averse. It's probably going to free me up to go again. And so some people want to do that.
Yeah.
We are, I think in the portfolio, most of our investments are minority investments, which is why the relationship is so important. We don't have a majority, mainly because if it's a really good business, people don't want to sell a majority of their good business. So, but, sometimes we can be majority, but minority or majority. And it's about making sure we're all on the same page about where we're trying to get to, what they want, and what they want there now and what they want in the future. And so for a lot of people, it feels uncomfortable to begin with to say, I'm going to sell down some of my equity. But actually, if you're going to have a smaller slice of a much bigger pie because you've got the investment to grow, that's going to be worth more than a big slice of a small pie. So, it's trading off things.
Yeah, makes complete sense. And then when you want to go on to say sell Hickories to
Green King.
Who did you sell proper onto? What
that went to they're called Warp. Yeah. Hickories. Well, I'll give you two examples actually, good examples. If we take Fourth Glade pet food business, kind of know there are a certain key number of players in the marketplace who are, in the pet food space, likely to acquire, want a brand like Fourth Glade. So, back from the future, we, about 2 years into the we know when we invest, we'll have a list of people we think might want to buy this business. About 2 years into the investment, we'll start having conversations with those potential buyers just to hear what they're looking for so that we can inform our strategy, make sure we're thinking about the right things, what's important to different groups of buyers, and start educating them about the brand, because often these brands are not on their radar because they're 7 million or 10 million, not 100 million.
Yeah.
And then we'll start educating them about why this brand's really good and why they should be interested. Not for sale now, but just warming them up. And then sort of year 4 or 5 is when you more formally start to think about, okay, we appoint an advisor to help us sell the business and go through a process. And so with Fourth Glade, there was trade people who wanted to buy it. There was private equity that wanted to buy it. Private equity who already had investments in pet. So there was quite a good pool of people who wanted to buy it. And so, we were able to find a right home for it. And finding the right home for the brand's important too. I think, you become very attached. Hickories, they're such a great team. I couldn't have worked with a nicer group of people. You're sad to see it go. But in the sort of pub market, there were 2 or 3 obvious buyers for this business. And it just so happened that Green King were the ones who were keenest and had the portfolio to help the next leg of the journey.
And then from the perspective of the buyer, so the one, so we're kind of putting this from all angles, but I think it's good to get full rounded knowledge, basically, for people listening. Talked about everything going up, 3 to 3. From their perspective, from Green King's perspective, what's in their head when...
So I think what they saw, they have a huge estate. I can't remember, it's near 2,000.
I used to deliver cheese to it. So.
Yeah. So they have an enormous estate of properties. They have multiple brands. And some of the brands are a bit tired, a bit old, legacy brands. And so what they saw, the strategic value for them was that they could put these Hickories in hundreds of locations, lots of locations. We talk about some of the sort of brands that they might be operating in that side. So there's a capital investment because they've got to convert to a Hickories. But for them to have these brands that are iconic, attract consumers, bring much greater revenue, better profitability, it just sort of fitted for them. So that's why it was an important acquisition for them, because they could see how to roll it out across the estate. They could see there was a team ready to do it with all the foundations in place who could do, we were doing a sort of between rolling out 3 to 5 Hickories a year when we were involved. They'd be doing 8 to 10 a year.
Yeah.
So you suddenly can multiply that very efficiently.
What are the, on that road from when you're so you take the brand on, say Proper or Hickories, you invest, you come on and you value add, which we'll talk about shortly. But what have been some of the real painful kind of troughs you've had to kind of...
Well, COVID. For one.
Oh, okay.
The whole hospitality industry shuts down. That was just a completely unusual situation. Nobody had any experience of how to navigate through that. What do you do? What do you do with all the head office staff? How do you keep people engaged for a year and a half while everything... I mean, that was a nightmare.
Wild. What do you do if, say so on that when you're trying to 3x, say a brand plateaus, do you ever see brands kind of plateau, and how do you, because I've seen I know founders, when a brand plateaus, they panic.
Yeah.
Like, how do you navigate through that? Because I've never talked about that. Actually,
yeah, I mean, we don't. If I'm really honest, we haven't had. Yeah, actually, we have plateauing. I think you have to just look in and go. You have to lean into it and say, why? What are we doing wrong? Has the market gone away from us? Is the product still fit for purpose? Is there a competitor who's eating our lunch? Are we just not communicating the brand very well? Why is this not growing? And so you have to lean into it, and you have to fight really hard, because when you hit that plateau, it is hard to get back into growth.
Is there like, because I interviewed, Dash Water?
Yeah.
So they'd kind of, Jack and Alex, lovely guys, they'd been prudent and had looked into this, where they thought, oh, we can kind of see a plateau coming back from the future. I keep thinking Back to the Future's in my head, that film. And so they tried to go into an adjacent category with I don't even remember the big, they basically wanted it to be like a sparkling water you get at a restaurant, where the mishap they had there, which he was detailing on the poddy, was that when you're going for a business lunch, most people don't, trying to get a whole table to agree to a raspberry dash is tricky. So they tried to kind of foresee this plateau, and actually end up getting pulled into that distraction, and then the plateau got even worse. And so when you say, can you foresee it, or is it just something that's kind of out of your control, really?
You should be able to foresee it. You should see it in the numbers. You should, your metrics should be telling you either the consumer engagement's falling off, or the numbers are falling off, or your distribution points are diminishing, or it should be visible. But sometimes you're so busy doing the doing you don't. And I think it's often the way that people think, oh, well, I'll go somewhere else. I'll invent this other thing that's going to make up for the shortfall. And that's why I say you have to lean into the problem and look at the problem with the core, because otherwise you have your orphan child again who's been just sort of... and it often happens when people go international, actually. That's a big...
international...
If they're moving into international markets...
I thought you meant into nationals.
No,
it's my brain.
Into other territories, other markets. It becomes very distracting. It becomes a very hungry machine, because you're learning on the job. You don't know that market. It's different. The language is different. You've got to change the website. Distribution's different. And that becomes the very hungry child. That sometimes means the core child in the UK gets left behind. So again, going international it's a really big step for a brand if you're going to do it properly.
Do you think international is even worth it for super small brands?
No.
Yeah, because I spoke to a lot of my mates are like they're who've got amazing brands. They're like, yeah, we've got to think something going on with the US.
Yeah,
it's like, but I'm not. I always sort of, and it's like maybe one pallet for, and it's a big. They're like, we're going to get into the US. And I always sort of, as you say, it's a delicate conversation. I'm like, mate, that's a bit of a distraction, I think. But yeah, it's kind of, because I think until you get bigger, it's not.
It is, and people make assumptions that it's just going to be the same over there. They speak English, so it's all going to be the same, and it's not. And the third-party logistics are different. The language they speak is different. The distribution network is different, and trying to be national in that market is just impossible when you're tiny. And so, far better just say, I'm just going to go to New York. I'll seed it in New York. I'll just do it quietly, not make a big song dance about it. Test and learn, test and learn, test and learn. Not big bang, hey, we've arrived. And then, oh, nobody knows me. Oh, hello.
Yes, yeah. Because in Costa Rica, Rude Health was everywhere.
Was it?
Yeah, it's literally everywhere. And my friend Elle doesn't work there anymore, used to work there. And my very good friend Lou used to be a sales director. And they were saying that what Rude Health did really well is they'd pick two markets. I think Costa Rica may have been... this is not me making stuff up, but this may be wrong. But I know that was a big focus. But then so was Portugal.
Yeah.
And Portugal, they'd managed to get like almost trying to turn the international taps on just one or two versus being
better, much better. And if you take Fever-Tree, it was Spain. It was, you know, they recognise that, you know, Spain was full of people who drank a lot of gin. And so it was a very obvious, and it became a very big and important market for them. But, you know, it is very hard to stay disciplined to that. And a lot of people lose a lot of money by going to the US or Asia or whatever. So we do cancel that thing of pick one, maybe two, really know them, really understand them, and don't do the big launch. Just don't. Just do I'm going to test and learn. I'm going to learn how this market works. I'm going to find out who the important people are. I'm going to work out if it's the same audience. And then you can start to invest behind that. But you just, a lot of learning.
What I found crazy is when I went to Ireland and how, like, I'd never been to Ireland as a country in of itself. And I was like, I couldn't believe how kind of European Dublin is. Yeah. If you've never been to Dublin before, like, you're like, oh my God, like this is so close, but so wildly different. Yeah. Obviously the makeup of Ireland in terms of the kind of the mechanics of the grocery over there is crazy because you're all going through a wholesaler. So it's just suddenly it's a whole new beast.
It's a whole different thing. And, you know, for example, with World Nutrition, actually in Ireland, supplements are very much a pharmacy item rather than a Holland and Barrett or D2C item. So it's a different channel. You've got to learn a different channel. And Neom, who've gone into the States, you know, I think they would be the first to admit, you know, they went into the States hoping everything would be equal, and it wasn't. And now we've got a much better system. You know, we're just doing NYC, LA, seeding the brand, doing what they did when they first started the brand here, which is start small, get known, then amplify.
Tell me about Neom. My mum was probably like this is a die-hard evangelist of Neom. It's literally everywhere in our house. But how did that, like, because I know I like hearing about other categories because I think you can learn a lot from other categories and that cross section. So what was the two founders? Was it two founders?
Two founders, Ollie and Nick. Yeah. Yeah.
What was their journey with Neom and then to you guys?
So I first saw Neom so many years ago, I can't remember. Right. They were a tiny brand. They were in a store opposite Peter Jones called the General Trading Company. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's really, they've nailed fragrance, aromatherapeutic fragrance. And I really liked it. And I wrote to them and sort of said, you know, where, you know. And they said, no, thanks, but not now.
They were just in like a little...
they were just in a few independents, you know, building their brand. But we stayed close and we talked, and I'd meet up with them often and have a coffee and chat about stuff and see if I could help them. So I think that courtship was probably 7 years, you know, long time. Mm-hmm. And then they were ready for investment. And, you know, I think they felt good about us and what we could bring and how we could work together. We'd built a great relationship. And they were beginning to scale through the John Lewis's, direct-to-consumer was taking off. They're moving into new categories, so it was the right time, and it's been a brilliant journey with them. They've I think they're ahead of their market. You know, well-being was not something people talked about 5 years ago. They were talking about it, so they've been thought leaders in a category, and now you know it's a big business.
How big's the business? If you don't mind me asking.
It'll be 50 million plus.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that because that's what I understand with health? I understand food because that's what I'm most privy to. But with like fragrances and stuff, and even supplements, does the bulk of that 50 million is that split D2C or like? How?
So they have a very strong direct to consumer channel. Right. Yeah. So it's sort of. I won't give numbers, but it's a big part of the business. But the John Lewis's, the Fenwick's, the Selfridges, they're all very important. and Amazon. We can't not play in Amazon. That's very important. And a lot of the other e-commerce platforms, the Hut Group and all that sort of stuff. So they have a very nice balanced portfolio, I would say, of distribution, which means you're not dependent. They had a phenomenal COVID, because everybody was at home. They wanted a nice well-being candle or some nice bath or something.
It's like a cuddle, isn't it?
which made it quite difficult. We saw this in our portfolio, that you have a lot of brands that, there were brands where they couldn't trade, and that was difficult, and there were the brands that could trade and did phenomenally well. So travel, you couldn't travel, so that was difficult. And you couldn't go to a restaurant, but you could buy a scented candle and bath oil, or you could buy jewellery, or you could buy flowers from Bloom and Wild. So you had brands who over exceeded their budgets, and then you had the come down because it was inflated. It wasn't real sales. So you have to get everyone.
Yes.
You talk about your plateau. It wasn't a plateau. It was actually, we're actually on our normal trajectory of growth, but we've had this silly spike, and so lots of thinking about, oh gosh, how does that feel? That makes brands feel awful because they think, it's just, why isn't it going to carry on like that? Well, it's not going to, because we're not all at home sitting inhaling candles or putting jewellery on or whatever. So that whole COVID boom bust thing has been, hard for. It's across consumer. Everyone's had the same experience. It was hard to navigate. The bounce back for travel was huge. The bounce back for hospitality was huge. But then you've got to sort of say, okay, it's huge, but it's not real because there's pent-up demand. So what really is our normal trading trajectory? Let's not get carried away and think we can hire a load more people, because actually this is artificially sort of inflated by pent-up demand.
As I say, I want to kind of compare some founders, not comparing founders, but like the whole portfolio, the whole Piper portfolio. So what would you say are some of the, all the founders you work with are kind of, they're doing something right, right? And it could be whether it's from swimwear to dog food to phone cases to Hickory, there's a whole smorgasbord of different brands. If you could thread the needle between each founder, like what would you say are some of the traits that you think make them, why are they working with Piper? Why are they becoming brand legends?
I think first and foremost, they're passionate about their product. That is what gets them up in the morning. They're the ones who sort of will storm into the office and say, this isn't good enough, we've got to do better than this. So they're very passionate about the product, why it's better and different. I'd say often they're people who've got a point to prove. It could be, have very successful parents, want to prove my self-worth. It could be had a very tough upbringing, want to prove myself. It could be I'm a team sports player and I'm an elite athlete and I just need something that is going to give me that same buzz. So there's a trait of competitiveness in them.
Self-worth proof. Yeah. Interesting.
Which is important. But you can get very humble founders too. You can get ones who you think, gosh, do they really want to make money? But they're passionate about their product. So, provided that stays at their core, they're happy. They're not really doing it for the money. They're doing it because they love seeing the smile on the guest's face or whatever it is. Then you've got the resilience. I think it's so important. You've got to have huge resilience because the knockbacks it is a roller coaster. It's never straight forward. It's never easy. And so you've got to be resilient and you've got to be able to pick yourself up and dust yourself down and go, that wasn't great, but I'm going to go again. So I think that core character of, rock of steel inside, that they're not going to be beaten. They're going to get through this. That's important. What else would I say? I suppose sort of people-wise, I think surrounding themselves with people who they trust is important. But I think often it takes a long time for that trust to build, because you do everything yourself. You know it better than everybody else. Can anybody do it as good as you? But the good ones are the ones who learn how to trust somebody else to do the job better than they can.
Yeah, so that's interesting. The similarities is the resilience, the kind of the passion, the team. Is there any specific founder, as an example, who just approach things? I'm obsessed with people who look at the world like that. That just excites me. That's why pretty much most founders I speak to have that worldview. Is there like a founder who just came with you guys and just did things so differently, that you can think of?
I think they all do things differently, which is why they win,
Interesting.
The guys at Fourth Glade, they did the hard yards. They did all the shows.
What brand, sorry?
Fourth Glade, the pet food, dog food brand.
Yeah.
They went around all the shows. They shoe-leathered their way around the country, eating dog food in front of consumers, putting it on toast and saying, if we can eat it, it's great for your dog. It's that good. That takes a lot of resilience and commitment and, away from family, and you're doing all that sort of hard stuff. So they really believed in what they were doing. They believed dogs deserved to have better food. It was a passion project, but they worked it hard. And, I don't think we'd come across many brands who'd done as many consumer shows as they did, and that was their thing. That was how they did it. I remember Adam at Olebar Brown talking about when he produced his first, I can't remember, 200, 500 swim shorts, he hand wrote a note with every single pair of shorts to send them out to whoever he was sending them out to. Very personal touch, and people loved it. And then you go, well, how do I replicate that? How am I going to do that time and time again? But, really thinking about doing things a bit differently. I think Monica Vinader, for example, they were very early adopters of customers as brand ambassadors. It was, yes, there's influencers, but your customers are your best brand ambassadors. Why don't we use them? So they did a very good job of that. So everybody has then Hickories, just having a way of guest happiness. That their whole mission was guest happiness. So surprise and delight. They, you would go there and suddenly they'd see a couple looking sad, and they'd go over. Everybody had license to go over and say, "Oh, you're looking a bit, can I help?" And give them something. Give them a free meal, or help that person get the car out of the snow and give them a hot chocolate. When they had one of the first new Hickories we did after we invested burnt down to the ground.
Really?
Just finished it. We'd spent an absolute fortune on it. And there was an electrical fault and the whole thing burnt down to the ground. The response from the community was extraordinary because they had embedded themselves in the community. They had made the community love them. So when this happened...
Where was this site?
Now I can't remember what site it was. It was... I'm going to say Coventry, just outside Coventry. I'll have to look that.
Yeah, yeah. It wasn't in London, though.
It wasn't, because they had none in London. But it was just this depth of love that came, and everybody was bringing food for all of them, hot chocolate for the fire brigade. It was a sort of outpouring of love because they had made the community their friend. And a lot of pubs don't do that. They just sort of, we're opening a pub and... bad luck if it's noisy and tough if people are on the pavement. That's not their style. They go knock on every door. They gave them free meals. They talked about what they were trying to achieve. They invited them to come and be the test panel for the first few nights. So, each one has its own little way of doing things a bit differently, I think.
Yeah, I love that. That is the twinkle. They keep the twinkle. I pushed myself to ask some hard questions, but you're on the driving seat, Libby, so we can take any of this out. But I'd love to know kind of the first thing is when we were meant to do this interview originally, you sadly got diagnosed with cancer. and thankfully we're sat here today, so it's all positive. But I'd love to know what that felt like and how that's kind of changed your worldview for the rest of your life.
It's a question everybody asks, has it changed?
Or what did it feel like to begin with, I suppose?
Well, I had no symptoms. I was well. I was just going for a routine checkup. I advise everybody to go and have a colonoscopy. It's very important at a certain age. But, it's a shock. They're very good at making you feel like we've got this under control. It's going to be fine. Little do you know how ghastly it's going to be, but they make you feel they're in control of it. And I think that was quite an interesting lesson to learn about if you present confidence, the other person receives confidence and feels confident. So just thinking about brands and when things go wrong and how you help teams, I think that's super important that you present this confidence. It's fine. We're going to get through this. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. Not, oh my God, it's all awful. What are we going to do? It's a disaster. So I learned a bit from that. Not working was, this is the first time I hadn't worked. I took 4 months off, roughly. And, I really missed it. I love the team here. I love what I do. I've been doing it, for so long. And it's never dull, and it's always interesting. And I feel so privileged to meet so many brilliant founders, great businesses. Yeah, it's difficult sometimes. And the team here is, it's family for me. It's been, I've been part of building them, so they're very important. So I missed that. Quite like getting back to routine. And then I think I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the job that the surgeons do and the nurses do. And until you experience that, I don't think you're quite aware of the pressures and the strains and the worries. And, I just couldn't have asked for better care, I suppose. So I feel it was an interruption. I'm not going to let it define me. And that's why I say, when people say, how's it changed? I say, I don't think it has. I've learned some things, but I'm not sitting here going, I don't want to work anymore, or, I've got to go and kick the bucket list into touch. I'm saying yes to a few more things that I probably could have said yes to years ago, but, just doing things where you go, no, actually, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I think that the confidence, I believe you learn from every situation. Like the most, I actually think the best learnings are from here, and you can apply to here. But the confidence breeds confidence is just so valuable with brand building, with people, founders trying to build teams. There's tons in that. So we've talked a lot about kind of resilience, founders' drive. That's something I ask a lot of guests about, whether that is trying to be competitive or build kind of some sort of, with me, I'm trying to prove people wrong. I was told at school, you're a fat little fuck.
A lot of founders have that.
I have that chip on my shoulder, which I'm trying to kind of grapple with, but it's interesting. But it's I believe in your tank is, I think it's quite reductionist to say, I was talking to Julie Metcalf about this, that if you just think, every founder's only doing it to get over the school teacher or the dad who told them they weren't good enough. I think that's one lever you can pull in the arsenal of drive. Others are joy, others are doing great things. So I don't think it's all about just, oh my God, this teacher told me that, right? Yeah. But I'd love to know what drives you, what drove you, what was the thing that just kept the fire in Libby burning through all those obstacles?
So I had a bit of you're not bright enough to go to Oxford, so don't waste your parents' money doing Oxbridge, and thinking, well, I think that's my decision, not your decision, school, and I do what I want, and my parents back me. So I had a bit of that. I think when I left university...
Did you go to Oxford?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing, yeah.
Yeah, I did.
So you proved them wrong?
Proved them wrong on that one.
Yes, amazing.
But when I left university, if you'd done Oxbridge, didn't really, or been in one of those universities, there was kind of a sense of you were going to get a job and, you'd be fine. The milk round would come, you get a job.
Sure.
And I didn't. And actually, I think it was a function of I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had no plan. I didn't even know if I had any skills at anything. So
what did you do at Oxford? Sorry,
I did history.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I came out sort of expecting the world to want me, and they didn't. And that was a bit of a, okay. I thought I wanted to be in advertising until somebody asked me to be a bag of peas in an interview. And I said, I don't think I can
They
do
asked you
this.
to be a bag of peas.
How would you be a bag of peas? How would you sell a bag of peas? So I said, that's not for me. I was lucky. I fell into Fitch, which was a commercial design practice that did a lot of, retail, graphics, airports, etc., packaging, product, really interesting environment where Crispin was the MD. And I would say I was very lucky in having Crispin as my mentor. I think having a mentor is a really important part of finding the thing you love. And he enabled me to find the thing I love, which is, funnily enough, I used to be told I was terrible with people and everybody was scared of me. And I'm scared of everybody. Why is everyone scared of me?
Why do you think people were scared of you?
I mean, that used to come back in my appraisals. People thought I was scary.
Really?
I don't know why.
That's wild. Yeah.
But I think what I learnt I loved doing was helping other people, really. Even though I was scary. That's what I loved doing. And so it was about learning how to build amazing relationships with people, how to empathize with them, how to hear their side, how to put yourself in their shoes such that you can then make them feel safe, make them feel that they want to be with you, work with you, deal with you. And so there was all of that. I'm not a great shopper, actually. It may surprise some people that I'm in this market and I'm not a great shopper. But I love this psychology of what makes a great brand. Why does this draw people in? Why is this special? Why is it better and different? And because we meet so many brands, I think you sort of hone your ability to see what good looks like time and time again. And sometimes you get it wrong. You might call it wrong, and we have sometimes called it wrong where we thought no, and actually it's been brilliant. So, but you're always learning. So I think for me, filling the learning funnel, dealing with different people, entrepreneurs have a lot of common traits, but they also have a lot of differences. And sometimes you're dealing with a husband and wife. Sometimes you're dealing with 4 founders. Sometimes it's one egocentric founder. Sometimes it's two best friends who fall out. You've got a multitude of relationship issues that you're dealing with, as well as being the business advisor. So I get driven by, I think, the relationships.
The myriad of different things. I think that if I boil down my core, it's that kind of something in me, which is like, why do people buy these brands? I'm obsessed with it. Like whether it's a restaurant or just that moments of magic, that endlessly fascinates me. So you talked about Crispin being your mentor. If you could, what was he doing?
So he was the managing director at Fitch, and then he and myself and 2 others originally left to set up Piper, and so really he's a creative genius, Crispin. So he was very much the part of the picture and piano idea. It was him and me, but I'd give him a lot of more credit probably. He founded Turtle Bay. He's somebody who thinks differently.
How so?
He comes, I think, from this customer obsessive angle about why would I do this? Why would I go there? Why can't I have this better? I mean, he has his own brand, which is a sheep's yogurt brand called Woodlands Dairy. I don't think there were sheep's milk yogurts, but he was obsessive about, sheep's milk's really good for you, and I've got this sheep farm, and I'm going to make this great milk, this great yogurt, and it's going to taste delicious. And you're going, really? He's done it. He probably taught me to ask the difficult questions too. He's very good at asking those difficult questions.
So, because let's go back to that, because I think I didn't. I'm just seeing the turtle bay up there now. What are some of those difficult questions that Crispin taught you that you kind of ask a lot of founders?
Not being afraid to ask or challenge, is there a better way we can do this? Not assuming that somebody always has the answer. You know, I can remember one of my early experiences as a consultant was a piece of work we did for Superdrug. I was quite young, and I presented back to the marketing director, who just said, "What would you know about my business? You don't know anything about my business." Well, actually, I've talked to more customers than you have, and I've embedded myself in their lives, and I've been to their homes, and I know why they're buying what they're buying. I don't think you've done that. So you have to push back on challenging the status quo, challenging somebody who believes they know more than you do. You know, founders. Sometimes you have to say, "Trust me, I've seen this 17 times. This is what will happen if we don't address this issue." And you have to be brave to do that. You have to be sure that you're right too. You have to push people. So those are some of the sort of challenging questions. I think when we look at brands, particularly the look and feel of brands, we get quite involved in making sure that they're sort of brands of tomorrow in how they look and feel. And sometimes when we invest, they're ready, and sometimes they need that sort of push. So Fourth Glade, they'd just done a rebrand when we invested, and you know, I just thought, this isn't good enough. And that's quite difficult, a message to give to somebody. But if you can root it in actually talking to customers, they don't quite get what's special about your product from the packaging you've designed here. Why don't we have another go round? Then it becomes less personal. It becomes... So it's finding ways of challenging that don't make people wrong-footed. I think that's the other thing. It's very easy to kill somebody's confidence.
Yes. It's like solving problems, not winning arguments.
Yeah.
I think because it can be so combative. The couple more things, I'm absolutely loving this. It's just so good to actually speak to someone who's, you know, everyone I've spoken to is, we're going to try and sell. But then to actually speak to you, Libby, is just wonderful, because it's like, this is how to actually do it. So it's gold dust for myself and for listeners. But one thing I wanted to ask you is I think, so brand versus brand legend, right? So I think the best, I write a lot about good to great. Good, Jim,
Yes, good to Jim Collins.
And he's got a thing which is, good to great brands. But I think good brands target your consciousness, you're conscious.
Yeah.
The best brands can go deeper into your subconscious. I think Perry's done a great job of this with the Yokens, with Year Valley. Like when the mum's taking the kid to something she's bought with Yokens, it's subconsciously filtering in. Camden Town Brewery with they kind of want you to nick those fat. Sorry, not Camden Town, Beavertown. They literally put a post out saying we want you to nick our lager things, because when it's at home, you start thinking of Beavertown. With everything you know, how do brands kind of begin to move from conscious good to subconscious kind of legendary?
Yeah. I think it's about finding the tribe, getting the tribe to be the people who, as you say, they take home the lager mat, or they knit the bobble hat for the innocent bottle. It's tapping into something where people feel they are contributing more than just pounds for a product. They are getting much more than that. They're giving back, or they're getting back. I was trying to think, you know, Monica Vinader do a sort of bring your old jewellery in, we'll repurpose it, you know, and use a lot of repurposed metals as well. And I think that's just reading the ROM, knowing that people feel like we've got too much stuff. We can't justify it. So how do I feel good about buying something? I feel good about taking that mat home because it shows I've been out and I've had my drink and I'm quite cool. I'm Beavertown, I'm quite cool. I've got my mat at home. So I think that whole getting beyond just the transaction of I'm paying you for this pint or I'm buying this bit of jewellery. I'm actually doing more than that. I'm supporting international women who are in the mining industry. I'm making dogs live longer. I'm, with Bruce's, I don't know how many customers would know this, but Bruce has been an absolute advocate for better regulation of dog daycare.
That's based in Cobham, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, I drive.
So you see the vans. I'm usually
yeah. I'm like, this is mad. Yeah. Because
but I think there's a lot of stuff that is quite subliminal that consumers may or may not know. But eventually it gets known, and eventually it comes out that there's depth to a brand, that they do more good than you think they do, not just for your dog, but actually for the industry. So it's not always very explicit, but I think it's people who want to dig deeper will find it. And as a brand grows, that will get more airtime.
Subconsciously. Yeah. Who gives a crap?
Yes.
I interviewed the founder of that, Simon Griffiths, and he was saying a brand is like three-dimensional. And it's because one thing we were talking about is too much purpose makes a brand boring.
Yes.
And
too worthy.
Too worthy.
Nobody wants to be sitting there thinking, I
always think the brand's like, it's like the person at the, a worthy brand is like the person at a dinner party who may look drop dead gorgeous, but you start speaking to him or her and it's
dull.
It's dull as hell. Yeah. But they've done a brilliant job of having these done, like, who gives a crap on the surface level is colloquial, hilarious toilet paper, bright packaging, but you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and that's how you sort of, the more depth you go, the more you get into the subconscious. Two more things and then we'll wrap this up, but I've absolutely loved this. So what is exciting to you now? Like, I think that I wrote a thing about this. I don't think it's been the best time to ever be in food and drink. Like, food and drink is now cool. Like, Mark Palmer told me, in 2002, it wasn't cool to go into food and drink. I think we've never seen a time like it. More and more brands. But what's exciting you specifically, Libby?
So I've mentioned the sort of health and wellness market. I think that's a very exciting market. There's still lots of things that people can be doing to make their lives better. I think hospitality still excites me. We're seeing so much innovation in tech, social gaming, flight club, all that sort of thing, where the market's changing. It's tech enabled, it's different, it's fun, it's sociable. So I think hospitality has still got lots of legs. I think travel still excites, both personally and professionally, actually. But people are not going to stop wanting to go away. I think we're seeing a consumer that values experience over things much, much more. So that's interesting. I think that food and drink is exciting, but it's so competitive. It's so busy and so crowded. So the bar just gets higher and higher and higher for whether you can cut through. Will you have enough money to cut through? So I think that food and drink market is exciting. But I also think it's...
What, is there any specific brands or categories or...
Well, we love, gut health. Everybody loves, we'd all like to be in gut health. I think the rise of mushrooms is really interesting. Well, not even just mushrooms. It's, going back to some ancient remedies.
Yeah.
You may have experienced this in Colombia, but when we were walking through the Caribbean canopy rainforest, she was the person taking us through was talking about the Kogi people and how they solve kidney stones, how they solve stomachache, how they deal with mental health. All natural. It's all coming from the ground and the earth. And I feel like we're in a bit of a tipping point where people are going to go back to nature for things. I think that's exciting.
The functional mushrooms things were super interesting. I interviewed a guy from Space Goods, which is really interesting brand. They've just raised quite a significant amount of cash, actually.
But that's quite an interesting. Is it a fad? Is it a trend?
Yes.
Back to what we were talking about. So I think it's a trend. I don't think it's a fad. I think mushrooms might be just a part of a trend. It won't just be mushrooms. There will be other things that people bring to the market. We've had the CBD wave. Feel like it's kind of...
Would you say CBD is a fad or a trend?
I think it's a trend, but I think it had a faddy moment.
Yes, interesting.
And with likely regulation reducing the amount you can put into any CBD product, that's going to make it a bit of a difficult market. So that's why mushrooms are interesting, because they're a food, and so they don't have so much regulation, for example. So I think that whole what can nature give us that we've typically sort of forgotten about. We've left it behind, the old stuff.
I'm a huge coffee drinker, like probably too much coffee, and that Space Goods or the mushroom coffee is beautiful because you get this calm energy, but you don't crash, and I think and it actually tastes good. I actually think another thing which, if you take a step back, if something tastes really good, just tastes in food really delicious, then it kind of survives any trend or fad. It's like we call it the feel in the mouth. But it's true of restaurants and it's true of food and drink. If it doesn't taste great, you're just not going to keep plugging away at it, thinking. So it's got to taste good. And it's got to do good. And so functional drinks, functional foods is a absolutely growth area that we think is quite exciting. I think the whole we're very aware that we've got this aging population, lots and lots of old people. Well, what opportunities does that bring? Nobody wants to be put in the old bucket. So you've got to be how you market to that audience. Okay, I need to ask you about this because I'm literally writing this in one of my newsletters, which will go out in a couple of weeks. But do you know Seth Godin is the...
Yes,
So he's actually coming on in the next couple of weeks, which will be amazing. I can't believe that's actually happening, but it's wild. But he talks about... I was just thinking to myself, I was like, why do I never really see a challenger brand target upwards to the older demographic. But then I was thinking, older people have more money, and older people are like, I think it's really reductionist to think just because someone gets older that they're completely different. And because I was thinking, well, my mates who are now, some of my mates who are 45 and 50, they still feel 21. Everyone feels 21, right? And then Seth Godin, was reading his book, and he talks about the difference between demographics and psychographics. So demographics will make, say, suddenly someone's 60. Just because someone is 60 doesn't mean they're not going to be into trying new avant-garde brands.
No.
But then I was thinking challenger brands. I've never seen a brand target the older generation, and I was thinking, are they leaving a huge opportunity on the table? Because how does that work? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I think a lot of them don't explicitly say they're for... I mean, Saga is obviously for old people. But a lot of them won't explicitly show they're targeting the older consumer because the older consumer doesn't want to be reminded that they're old. So you've got to be quite clever. I mean, there are brands, there's a makeup brand called Look Fabulous Forever that's just aimed at older people, helping them to get the makeup right because your skin changes so much. There are some mobility brands. There are the people who've started things like Granny's Get a Grip, and there's something called HSL, which is chairs for people who are getting old and can't get out. They're not very sexy, but they're very necessary. But I think what we're seeing more and more is things like in travel, there's this sort of senior gap year that's happening, that people are, and there's a brand called Slow Cyclist who I've travelled with actually, who, basically they're taking, as you say, these people, they've got money, they've got time, they want to travel, they want to be adventurous, soft adventure, not hard adventure. So, you know, you go to Romania and you cycle through Romania, or you go to Rwanda and cycle through. So they're there, but they don't label you as, you know, by the way, you're getting old. Now you need to do this.
Yeah, it's so delicate. But I just think of our specifically challenger sort of FMCG brands. Obviously, you've got your top core demographic, and I think most people think I'm going to target people like me, which is probably the right thing to do if you're trying to build a tribe.
Yeah.
But say you get to a brand like Lucky Saint, for example, who that kind of is their core, and it's what I'm trying to tease out, and I haven't finished this, is that's their demographic, but their psychographic allows them, they could still target up here, and that's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So like, for example, a 50 to 70 year old may still absolutely love cycling and running, so therefore could Lucky Saint and I don't do a few more things targeted towards that.
Yeah.
Just I'm trying to maybe partnership with the slow cycle, for example.
Yeah. I think what we talk about a lot, though, is it's very important to know who your core customer is, build your brand around them. The others will come. We see it like a bullseye. If you get it right for the core, other people can access the brand if they want to, if they have that same psychographic or that same attitudinal approach in their life. So, but it is complicated if you, almost nothing worse when people come in and say, oh yeah, we appeal to everybody. And you go, well, how do you do your marketing then? Because you can't appeal to everybody. That's like, I've got to market to all ages, everywhere, geographically. I've got to be in everything from the Sun through to the Sunday Times. You just can't do that. So know who your core market is. Make sure they don't grow out of you. You've got to grow with them. A Picture and Piano, I remember when we came to sell it, we definitely felt we weren't the core market anymore. So you have to make sure that you've got people in your business who are your core market, or that you're bringing in the new wave of customer. Because they grow old and they grow up and they move away. So either you grow with them or you bring the new audience.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting because I think the psychographic is almost when you're building that core, should brands think about the psychographic or the demographic? Like, because I think
more and more the psychographic. I think, as you say, we've got the new, young, old.
Yeah.
And so you can't so it's more about, are these people into looking after their gut, their health, their well-being? They might be at 20 because they've got a particular issue or problem, and they might be at 60 because they're creaking at the limbs and they need turmeric. And so, but they're all people who are interested in their own health. They're all people who want to look after their body. So they are the same tribe. So I absolutely agree. It's not just like 25 to 35
well,
years.
That's one of the follies of business school. I know learning changes, this is everything, but we were taught when I was there, and I think a lot of people with brand building probably do think more of the demographic. It's just the old, not the old way of doing things. Well, it is kind of the old way of doing things. It's like, right, this is the age, this is the income, this is the thing. But it's like, well, actually, a 20-year-old, a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old, they could all be into cycling and gut health. Final question, Libby, but this has been wonderful. But I asked this to all guests, but what is one truth you believe that most people would disagree with you on?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. And I haven't got an answer for you, so you might not be able to put this in. What is the one truth that I believe that other people would disagree? Well, I suppose if I think about my own career, if I say to people I've been doing the same job for 35 years, they go, oh God, that must be so boring. How can you have done this? So I think the younger market today, you think, I've got to keep moving on, I've got to change, I've got to do another job, I've got to move on. And sometimes I think finding what you love and just becoming really, really good at it and just keep doing it really, really well is fine. People feel this need to, I've got to go here and then I've got to go here and I've got to go there. And I actually, that's great. but it's not essential. You can find ways to learn wherever you are. And if you I think people sort of think, oh, I've stopped learning, so I'm going to move job. You haven't stopped learning. You've just stopped learning, pushing yourself to learn harder, more. You could learn more from the same job, but you just don't believe that. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does 100%, because I think it is. There's a hopping around mentality, which I think pretty much most people believe in. That is it's whether that is moving upwards or just kind of a boredom thing.
Yeah.
But I think and I think I agree with you. This is my 35-year project. Well, ideally 50, maybe even longer. But yeah, I think it's.
And you're not going to get bored, and you're going to learn a ton of stuff, and you're going to be interesting.
Well, someone said to me actually once, was like, "Yeah, you'll stop this in 9 years' time."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Why?" He goes, "Just trust me, you will."
Yeah.
Just trust me. I was like, "Fuck that." Sorry, it's different language, but anyway, Libby, this has been amazing. I think it's going to help so many. Of our listeners. It's just jam-packed with wisdom. So, yeah, super grateful. Thank you.
I've really enjoyed it. And we've covered a lot.
We have. We certainly have.
We've been around everything. So I feel like we've done a very thorough job.
Amazing. Thank you.